Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to the show. It's no secret that emotional connection is fundamental in romantic relationships, but just how important is physical intimacy, and how little or how much does it affect the emotional connection with your partner? Today, we're joined by intimacy and sex educator, Pauline Ryeland, to dig a little deeper into this. Hi, Pauline. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Hi, thank you. And yeah, it's lovely to be here. It's exciting to always have a chat about my favourite subjects.
I find this really exciting too. Now, I know you previously worked in administration, so I'm really curious to know how and why did you make that career jump?
It wasn't in my plan, I can assure you. It's a bit of a long story, really. I guess just the journey that I sort of went on, and I guess in a nutshell, you know, my marriage ended probably about 20 years ago. My libido was completely shut down, didn't realise that I'd shut it down. The day after he left, my libido came back on steroids. I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? And had that awareness that it had shut down, and also the awareness that I was never going to switch it off, but I didn't know what that really looked like. And then I just started doing a lot of personal development work, and different things led into different things. And then I got a download from, I guess, what I call my higher self, that said, you're a sexual healer. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what that even means. I'm just going to park that over there for now. Had no clue. And then I did my NLP training, and a few little things came in the training where we did some mock-up talks, presentations. And one of my mock-ups was to walk out in front of an audience to the Salt and Pepper song, Let's Talk About Sex, Baby, and talk about sex. I don't know where that came from. And so that was just what we were playing with it. And then I was going through a process with my girlfriend to find my niche. And I knew I didn't want to be a business coach. And so I was like really into health and emotional well-being and personal development. And basically every time I opened my mouth, my girlfriend just slammed a fist in her hand and just yelled at me, boring. And so it was like, felt like my back was against the wall. And next minute I blurted out sex. And she goes, that's it. You know more about sex than I know. And I've just gone, oh my God, I'm not sure about that. So that's where it started. And I was like, I sat with it and I went, well, okay, I'll give it a go. I'll just apply the principles of being an NLP, which is a Neuro-Linguistic programming coach. Look at the problem, look at where they want to go back to the problem, and get below the surface to all the underlying core issues to find out what's creating that and go from there. And so that's what I did. And then I started doing more trainings, and here I am 13 years later, having worked with thousands of people.
That's such a fascinating story. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
But before we get sidetracked, we'd love to get to know you better.
Right.
This is Have You Met Pauline? My first question for you is, do you read any books?
Oh, I go through stages with books, and I've always got a few on the go, but I have been a little negligent this year because I wrote my own book. So that would be the book that I would talk about.
Well, apart from your own book, what are some of the few that are in your like little rotation thing?
Yeah, is it Untethered Soul? Can't remember the author's name.
Well, what's it about?
It's about consciousness, and really, really, really interesting. It's actually a beautifully written book, and it's quite potent. Yeah, really, really loved that one. Yeah.
What's the number one?
That's the most recent one, anyway.
What's the number one reason you've kept it in your book rotation?
Good reference point. maybe at some point. I probably won't read it again because I've got too many in the pile to do.
Fair
but,
enough.
It's like when it's a book that I really actually complete and I really enjoy it, then I want to keep it on the
That's
bookshelf.
completely fair.
Yeah.
What about films? Are there any that you've watched recently that you've enjoyed?
Gosh, not for a while. And I'm very, very bad at remembering movie names and music names and song names. I'm actually really bad at that. I can tell you a movie not to see that I just saw recently, which is the new Marvel movie, and it was terrible.
Oh, no,
I
I
was
think so excited.
devastated. It was so bad. It was like,
Oh,
oh my God, I should have stayed home. I just continued watching Netflix. It was bad. It was really
well,
bad.
do you reckon I should just go and watch it and get disappointed for myself? Or do you think it's like I shouldn't even waste my time with it?
Pretty much that.
Oh, that hurts.
I
All
know,
right.
because I'm a huge Marvel and
Yeah.
DC. I love all those movies. So yeah,
I'll mull over it,
you
but I might
think about
have
it.
to take your advice. My next question for you is,
Yeah.
who do you look up to the most?
Oh, look, I've had lots of different famous people over the years, but I've become disillusioned with most of them. So I wouldn't even mention any of them, to be honest, right now. So I think, some of my own personal mentors through my career, I definitely would look up to. And they also did little blurbs in my book, which I was really grateful for. So, Kane Minkus, he's a renowned leader and speaker worldwide. I learnt one of my NLP trainings through him. He's a phenomenal businessman, a major success, so definitely inspired by him. My Tantra teachers, they're semi-retired, but they're still doing a little bit of work. Diane and Marie Ryeland, and they're based on at Byron Bay and Sunshine Coast. I did my Tantra training with them. So yeah, just various teachers from my trainings, I'd say. And then, certain friends around me, they inspire me with what they've done in their trainings and the directions that they go for, and the sort of friends that, always there to lift me up and they're always there to pull me out and call me on stuff, and vice versa. And that's true friends.
For sure.
Those are you. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Those are very admirable traits, and you sound like you have amazing friends.
Yes.
What is the most memorable course that you've taken?
So I did some shamanic training. So I was at apprentice in Native American Indian teaching for about 5 years. So that was quite incredible, the journey that I went on with that. And I did a few different courses with them, which was sort of like the things that really opened me up to doing this work. And so for that, I'm incredibly grateful for those teachers and those teachings. So that would be one. And just, I guess, I think more recently, because there's a lot all blurred in there together, but more recently I did a course called Havening, which is for trauma and anxiety. And it's phenomenal and so simple. And the shifts I see in at one session with a client that have some form of trauma or some form of major anxiety is phenomenal. We remove the emotional charge, so they might score it a 10 out of 10, and I get that to a 0 in one session.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had it done on myself for dental work. And because I had really bad childhood stuff done to me, at the dentist, and there's many years, 15 years or something, where I never went to the dentist, and now I have to go quite regularly. And when I first went for the gum cleaning, the hygienist completely re-triggered me, completely re-traumatized. I was an absolute mess. And I was almost like, that's it. I'm not going back to the dentist. My teeth can fall out. No, that's not practical. So about a couple of days before my next appointment, and I was just like, I don't want to go, like wanting to have a tantrum almost. I found out about this modality, and so I rang up and got the session in, and at the end of the session, I couldn't find the trauma. So I could feel my brain looking for it. I couldn't find it. It was really bizarre. And then over the next few days, I would do the Havening practice, which is rubbing your hands together. And I would say my mantra about going to the dentist, and I literally would have a half a smile on my mouth, and I'd be like, this is so weird. I am literally smiling about going to the dentist. Like, who am I? What's happened to me? And I went, that's it. I need to learn this. So I did the
Yeah.
training. So that's probably the most wow one I've done that creates such an amazing, strong impact and change quite quickly. So yeah, you're pretty
That
happy with
sounds
that one.
incredibly transformative, and it sounds
Yeah.
like you've had some amazing teachers. And I
Yes.
know that a good teacher can make all the difference in your education and your
100%.
academic journey.
Yes.
So that's amazing for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're
I feel like
welcome.
I got to know you a bit better now.
Yeah.
And now we'll move on to the interview section.
Okay.
My first question for you is, what is a relationship in your terms?
Okay, so in my terms, I guess are relationships where two people come together to be in a conscious and committed relationship. And a conscious relationship is really where both parties are really considerate of each other, think of each other, they're a contribution to each other daily. And I guess by being with that person, it's a bonus. Like it's an added extra into your life, to as if you're living on your own. So and being in that sort of relationship, it's like you bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And in your opinion, does
Alrighty.
a romantic relationship still hold the same meaning, structure, and importance as decades ago?
Well, I read that question before, and I think, times have unfortunately dramatically changed. And the structure, I think, has changed. And I think that's partly why a lot of relationships aren't lasting as long as what they used to be. We are in a throwaway society. If you think of dating, swipe left, no, what is it? Swipe right, whatever it is, swipe left, no,
Yeah.
just based on that look. So everything's instant. Why haven't you messaged me yet? Hello, I just got the message like an hour ago and I have a life. So there's those sorts of demands and expectations that have come in. It doesn't mean that, I guess, that a relationship can't be redefined. And if a relationship's which is one where there's thought and care for the person, and I think key is maintaining open and honest dialogue and communication. It just means that really relationships now, we get to set new parameters and boundaries, and that's how we can redefine our relationships.
Yeah.
So not necessarily based on what our relationships used to be, especially if they haven't worked out. It's like, well, this is who I am and how I show up. This is how you are and how you show up. How do we want to be together? How do we want to create this relationship together? Do we want to grow and evolve together? That's what I would define as a relationship now.
Yeah. You mentioned before that it's unfortunate. What do you think as a society we could change about this?
How long
Or
have we
should
got?
be changed? Because there's so many things that we could.
Well, some education at a younger age. I mean, let's face it, we stumble along. We don't have any direction of how to be in a relationship, how to be sexual, and we just keep stumbling along. And so now the biggest educator for all of that is porn, and that's wrong, because that's not what relationships are. That's pretend. That's not how a relationship is functioning. That's not how good sex is done either. So that's our only guideline. So we need to be bringing into school, actual conscious relating sort of activities and that going back to that respect of each other and teaching at a grassroots level. And I just don't see that happening, but that would be ideal.
Yeah, for sure. Because especially with topics like this, the more you try and hinder it or kind of just push it down, the more people are going to just feed off misinformation because they don't know any better as well. So I totally agree with what you said. But relating back to the topic, how would you define physical intimacy?
Okay, well, I believe there's two levels of physical intimacy. We have non-sexual and sexual.
Could you elaborate on that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So I guess non-sexual physical intimacy can look like holding hands when you're going out and about, shopping, doing whatever, sitting watching a movie at home, Netflix, that sort of, your non-sexual, having a cuddle. And just creating also, there's activities that you can do that can create connection. that connects you in a more spiritual way as well. Having a hug and a kiss daily, they're all non-sexual physical activities that create that sort of intimacy.
And how does physical intimacy look like, especially in a relationship?
Well, I think that's part of it. That's a big part of what I just said. And I often will get women that will come to me for consult, and they'll say, the only time I get touched by my partner is when they want sex. It's like, I require more than that. I need to have the back of, the light touch on the back of my back as we walk down the steps, or, just those sorts of engagements and those physical, non-sexual things, as opposed to, and I don't touch him anymore because if I touch him, then that means sex, and it's not what I'm doing. So there's miscommunication around what the touch is. So I think that's the thing that can often be lacking in relationships, is the non-sexual intimacy and the misinterpretation of a touch meaning, oh, that means she wants sex.
Yeah, absolutely. And what role do you think physical intimacy plays in relationships? What would a relationship look like without the physical intimacy?
Without it,
Yeah.
just was like, oh, that would be horrible. I just could feel myself contracting there when you said that. It'd be pretty cold. I don't think there'd be very much connection emotionally, because that holding hands and that non-sexual, but that physical intimacy like that's not sexual, creates connection and creates that deeper connection with each other on a different level to what sex does. So if your only form of touch is for sex, I suspect that the relationship's pretty cold and pretty regimented.
Do you think there is some relationship, maybe not very common, wherein both parties might not really communicate their love in the form of physical intimacy, and therefore it might work for them?
Well, there could certainly be. And I guess in that instance, they probably don't know any better and know any different, and that's just the way they function. But I have worked with couples like that, especially if they've got sort of some autistic or ADD or something like that, on the spectrum of some sort. And so sometimes in those instances that is quite often the case. But there's still a level of frustration because they don't have the capacity to communicate that with each other of what they want as well.
Yeah, and it's probably an outlier to...
Sorry?
And it's probably an outlier too. Like it's not representative of all the relationships out there. It's one here, one there. So yeah, that totally makes sense. So what do you think sets physical intimacy apart from other forms of intimacy? Why is it such a crucial factor in relationships, like you've expressed?
Because it's building. It's just building that relationship. If you can't touch your partner just for the sake of touching them in a way that's expressing your connection non-sexually, I think you're missing out on a lot, definitely. And so sometimes you might have to look at what that means and how you can improve on that. And it can also come back to your upbringing and what different things. If you didn't have any physical attention and connection from your parents as a child, then that's going to be very hard for you to receive and very hard for you to give as well. So it's about looking at what you can do to improve on that and how you can sort of move beyond it, I guess. Because I think it is very important. We need to be able to differentiate physical, the intimacy is non-sexual and sexual. We need to be able to differentiate it because it is two different things.
So apart from that differentiation between non-sexual and sexual, is there a difference between physical touch and physical intimacy, and what distinguishes the two apart?
Well, I guess physical touch in general, that's your holding hands, having a cuddle. Physical intimacy could probably be more along the lines of moving towards sexual. So not necessarily going into foreplay, but, getting a little bit more, what's the word? Let's say having a cuddle, and that just starts as a physical, you're having a cuddle, and then you sort of, start feeling a little bit aroused. So it moves to a different level, but it's not quite sexual yet, but it's sort of on the way, if that makes sense. And I guess at that point, that's when you can go, I don't want, this is enough for me right now.
Yeah.
Or you keep going, and allow it to go to where it's going to go.
And for couples who are having trouble with experiencing physical intimacy or physical touch at the moment, what's your advice on moving forward with this? How would you approach this situation?
Well, if I had a couple come to me that had trouble with physical touch, I would probably assume from that they're more than likely not having sex. Because that's probably what's happening. So there's no sex and there's no physical touch. So I have to look at what's going on in the relationship. Why has it got to that point? How long has it been? What's their sexual function like? Like, if he's, having trouble with erection function, then that could be withdrawing from touch because the way worried and stressed, if he's gonna function or not. Or for her, it could be, her libido switched off. And so we've got to look at all the different reasons and things as to why that's happening. And so when once we do that, what I teach all my clients is to connect to themselves first. So we want to get out of our heads, that our busy heads, and get into our bodies and connect into our bodies and just sort of start realigning everything. So neurologically, we realign brain, heart, genitals, and get everything connected. So it's about teaching them how to connect to themselves first. And then once they can connect to themselves first, then they can come together and connect more easily. And so there's different activities you can that I would do.
So where should couples start looking if they want to resolve this issue? For example, if they have erectile, if someone's experiencing erectile dysfunction or someone's libido is switched off, where can they go to seek help?
Call me. My specialty. That's what I work with. Yeah. So I mean they're the things that I work with. So I'm working with the physical and the mindset as well, which is probably my point of difference, because the different modalities that I bring in, I'm looking at the problem, and a woman might come to me and say she's got no libido, so I have to look at why. Or a good example, I could give would be a lady's starting with me and married for 20 plus years, loves her husband, adores him, can't imagine life without him, but does not want to have sex, and actually told him, poor man, that she's not sexually attracted to him anymore and not sure if she ever was. He's like gutted.
Yeah.
And she's gutted that she said it. And so she came to see me on her own because she's like, I don't want him to hear all that again.
Yeah.
And so from that, I was able to work out when that started. And so it started after, because pre-baby, she was fine. But it started after her first child, because he has a very, very high sex drive. So I don't know how long afterwards, but he was started to go, well, come on, he's putting the word on her. He wanted to have sex again. And she's just in her head, she's reeling, going, I've just given birth to an 8-pound baby. Oh, why is he going in? That's pretty much where she was coming from. And so I guess he wore her down and she relented and had sex with him, but she was checked out, didn't want to know about it, and resented him.
Oh.
And, she was not a pleasurable experience for her. And that is what's been locked in her system for all these years later.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
And so now we're working on clearing all of that and getting the libido back and getting her desire back to go and initiate sex.
So apart from issues with erectile dysfunction and libido, are there any internal or external stresses that can affect someone's ability to display physical affection towards their partner, and what might they be?
Internal or external? Well, internal could be trauma and stress, unresolved trauma, stress. That would definitely have a play because, you know, we've got unresolved trauma, we're in flight freeze mode. So we're not grounded. We're usually very busy in our heads or completely here checked out.
Yeah.
So that can have a big part to play. And if there's PTSD involved as well, very much so. So that would be some of the internal factors. External, it could be, again, you know, your upbringing. It could be previous relationships if you've been in any domestic situations, been in abuse or something. That's going to switch you off, even though you might be married to somebody that you love dearly. You know, you can't imagine life without them, but it's that whole thing of you still have this energy of this space of don't come near me, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Because of the conditioning that you've had, and you want to change that, but you don't know how to. But there are things that are going to keep that physical distance.
Yeah.
So it's about addressing those issues so that you can get through them and come out the other side.
Yeah, and if someone's noticing that that's what their partner's experiencing, is there a way that they can kind of bring up that issue to them, or is this something that they kind of have to figure out on their own?
Well, I think it's important to be able to talk about things if you're in a relationship, but it's about how you talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a way of communicating. So, you know, pick your moment, obviously. You know, over a meal, if you're sitting at the table talking at dinner, then that's the ideal time, not when you're watching TV or half on your phone or attention. So you've got the attention of your partner. Yeah. And then I always recommend, if there's a conversation, I sometimes tell my clients, if I'm working with a couple, one of them, I say, look, this is a conversation I think you need to have. Then what you would say is, when this happens, it makes me feel. So you're not going, when you do this, blah, 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 because when you do that, it's like you're in attack mode and they're on defense mode and all the walls will come up and everything gets shut down. So that's not going to work. So you have to say, when you do that, when you do X, Y, Z, it makes me feel X, Y, Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
End of sentence, and just see what their response is. And then try and just say, you know, I'd really like, and if they don't respond, then just say, could we have some conversation around it? Because it's making me feel very disconnected. And I love you, but bring the I love you back in there, so reassuring to them that you love them.
Reminds them that you still care about them.
Yeah, 100%. And then hopefully have some open conversation.
Yeah.
Because if you don't talk to each other, you don't know. It's that whole thing of having the elephant in the room, you know, like you don't want to talk about it, and you go around in circles and you don't get anywhere because you don't talk about it.
Yeah, and not everything's implied. So you might hint at certain things here and there, or you might think that you're hinting at certain things here and there, but your partner,
because they might not pick it up.
Yeah, your partner is not going to be able to read your mind all the time. Like they can guess at the very most. Yeah. But you know, and you might offer like a bit of implication in what you're saying, but you can't really expect your partner to read that implication and read between the lines all the time. So that's really good advice. But for long-term relationships, how can couples maintain that healthy physical affection over that long period?
Well, they've got to work at it. Can't take for granted. Well, let go of expectation and demand and work at it. Treat the person you're with the same as you treated them 10, 15, 20 years ago, like when you first met them and fell in love with them and you took them out, you bought them flowers, or you did the little things for them. Because what happens when we get into a relationship, those sort of things start to slip away. And then when kids come in, they slip away even further.
Yeah.
It's really important to keep those things going to remind you of why you're with that person and not keep taking each other for granted and letting go of that expectation and create every day as a new day.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
That you're actually setting the intention of choosing to be with that person again.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like when you get into long-term relationships, instead of going on dates, you start just chilling or hanging out at home and you completely forget about going on dates or
Rose.
doing special things for each other. So it sounds like that is really important to
Yeah, 100%.
keep the physical affection going. So in your experience, does physical affection improve a couple's emotional bond and vice versa?
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about why that might be so?
Well, I think the physical connection creates a bond. And so when you've got that bond, it deepens your connection, and it can deepen it on not just the physical level, but on the emotional level, because you're getting your needs met. You've got that hug every day. You know, you've got someone you can cuddle. You can, pop your head on their shoulder, whatever it is that you've got that there, like someone's got your back. So it sort of does build that connection, and it can just deepen over time. Yeah.
So are there any books, courses, or other resources that you would recommend for this subject?
One book that I did think about was The 5 Languages of Love by Gary Chapman. And it gives you insight into your love language. And I think that's really important because, for example, I'll give you the 5 different love languages. So we've got acts of service, we've got words, gifts, touch, and quality time. So I remember years ago having a boyfriend years ago. I had a few. Sorry, that didn't come out quite right, but you know what I mean. Anyway, his thing was quality time. So we would see each other and he would just want to sit down and just connect and talk and hang and have that quality time. And mine was love language is touch. And so it's like, I would have a hug and cuddle. So it's like, how do we meet each other's needs? Because you will always express to your partner your own love language. So if your partner likes words or words of affirmation, oh, thank you, darling, that's so great. I love it when you do that. You're so clever. And that's what you like to hear, then you need to say that to them. And it's sometimes it's a little uncomfortable to operate from not your key love language, but to operate from their love language and give it back to them.
Yeah.
That can make a massive difference in your relationship if you can start to function that way. And it's not easy to function that's not your natural love language. But if you understand your partner's love language, then communication and things can really, really change if you can start bringing in a little bit of their love language in your communication to them.
Yeah, it's also like it makes them feel a bit more fulfilled and cared for because it's the language that they understand.
Yeah.
They can see that you're trying to speak their language and they're just overall going to be more appreciative of it as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for answering my questions.
You're
now
welcome.
Moving on to the practice/habit section. And this is where we ask you about the practical everyday application of what you've shared. So what is a habit that you practice or would practice to exercise physical affection with your partner, especially one that helps with the strengthening of emotional bonds?
Well, I have a lovely practice and it's called the hello hug.
Oh, tell us a bit about the hello hug.
So I always ask my clients, so when you've been apart and come home or come back together, how do you greet each other? Just go, hi, honey, I'm home. Shut the keys down, turn the TV on, open the fridge, I don't know. Or do you actually come together and have a hug and a kiss? It's amazing. Everyone is quite different. And I go, okay, well, this is now your hello hug. So the hello hug is to come together in a specific way of hugging. But it's also about timing. So if my partner came home and I was in the middle of mixing dough for a bread or a cake and my hands were all like, just give me a minute. I'll be with you in a minute. Because, you don't want these sticky hands. You want to get that in the oven. So you clean all that up, put it in the oven, and go, okay, I'm ready to say hello now. So what you do is you come together, full body lock.
Yeah.
No gap, full body lock. And we normally hug. I think because we're predominantly right-handed, we normally go to the right. We want to go the other way, to the left, so our hearts are touching each other.
Oh, that's
So I know
very,
it's pretty
very
cute.
heartwarming.
Yes, and you put your
Little
hands
pun in
around
there.
the back of their heart. So you do that. You come together and close your eyes, and you take 3 long, slow, deep breaths together.
Mhm.
And then when you've completed those breaths, then you can have a little hug or a little kiss or whatever it is that you want. And then you can come apart. How was your day? Blah, blah, blah. Well, what this does, it has, it creates a really deep connection, deeper intimacy. It gets you out of your head, present into your body. And so over time, what happens is you start communicating with your partner from your heart instead of from here. Game changer.
Yeah, and it sounds like it also makes you slow down a bit. You know, there's life going around you. You've been doing everything else apart from talking to your partner all day. It makes you slow down from life, take a break,
Yeah.
and just appreciate your partner in the moment.
Yeah,
So it
100%.
sounds really, really nice.
It is. It's yummy.
It sounds like a fairly simple task, but are there
Yeah.
any challenges to doing this practice at all?
No.
None.
No.
That's a
None at
new
all.
one.
It's easy. It's not complicated. Every single couple I give it to, they go, oh, we love the hug.
Hmm. And would you recommend doing a separate practice along with this one that might reinforce it?
Not really. No, it's just about having the agreement that that's what you're going to do when you're apart.
Mhm.
You just have to
Fair
both agree that when we've been apart, this is our hello hug. If you've been apart 4 times through the day, you can't, each time you come back together, you do the hello hug.
That
Not
makes
just
a
once
lot
a
of
day.
sense.
I mean, because you might be in and out. I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on in
you
your world.
might just be going to grab delivery or something like that, and then you come
Oh,
back
no, not like
like
that.
a
But it's
minute
like,
later, and you're like, "Hello, hug."
not quite like that. I'm talking about if you've been apart for a while. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
That's
Now we'll move
okay.
on to the open mic section, and this is your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about that
Yeah.
doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay. Well, obviously I'm passionate about my work, and there's lots of different areas that I work with. So, obviously if people are interested in, they can come on my website and go through the inquiry form to contact me. I work on Zoom predominantly, so I work nationally all around Australia, and I do have overseas clients from time to time. So we just have to line up the time zones. That could always be a little bit challenging, but we get there eventually. I do have a book that I mentioned before that I wrote. So it's called Conscious Sexuality from Prude to Pleasure. And it is this part of my journey of becoming a sex therapist. So I expand on the little story that I shared at the beginning. It's much more involved than that. And I go through my journey of how it came about. And I talk about the modalities that I use. I go into much more depth about them. I talk about sacred sexuality, conscious sexuality, consent and boundaries, lots of different things like that as well. And then sprinkled throughout the book is lots of practices that you can do on your own if you're single or with a partner if you're in a relationship. And people can just buy it from my website, which is better than Amazon, because then you get a couple of credits. And Amazon don't take a percentage. It's much better to get it from me. I have a free ebook on my website. People are welcome to grab that. It's called 8 Tips to Better Communication and More Intimacy. And I am running some couples workshops on the Sunshine Coast next year. And there's about 3 or 4 already listed for the first half year on my website. I'll start promoting them next year when I do the Mind Body Spirit festivals interstate. So I'll be in Melbourne in June, the long weekend in June for that. And when I'm there, I usually speak as well when I'm there. So that's probably it on my work. And my other passion is health and fitness. That's the stuff that I, every day, every morning I'm out the door and I go to the gym and I'm like, I've been doing this for so long. It's just natural. It's all like, I didn't get to go to the gym this morning because I had I did a training this morning, so a course. So that was an early one. So it's like, okay, gotta get there tomorrow. But yeah, health and fitness, the gym is my passion. I go through my stages where I'm super fit and stages where I'm not as fit as I would like to be.
Don't
and
we
health,
all?
yeah, I think we all do. But it's a journey that I've been playing with for a good 20 years, so I'm pretty committed. And my health in general, looking after my health and alternative therapies and medicines is my passion. So I'm really interested and invested in eating well and eating organically and trying not to have too much sugar and no alcohol and that sort of stuff. So keep my vibration, my energy high. So that's my main passion. Yeah.
You sound really, really interesting, and your book sounds like it's an incredible benefit to people who are interested in finding out more. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're so welcome.
If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Okay, just to my website, it's paulineryeland.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook under Intimacy Whisperer under my business name. Or LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn. Same thing.
Amazing. That's paulineryeland.com. We'll link her website along with her social media in the show notes below. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at re.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.